Tell me about Tom Chima in Cleveland and maybe what people in Dayton might expect from the track record up there.
Well, he is definitely one of your business corporate types of people. A Harvard attorney,
Mm-hmm.
who travels in big money circles. And in the late 80s, early 90s, when all the buzz started about, we need a new ballpark, or the Indians will leave town, these big monkey bucks formed this gateway CDC
Mm-hmm.
in order to basically push the idea that Cleveland would collapse without a new stadium, and of course, without a new stadium, the Indians would leave. And he was appointed executive director. I would guess that was probably around 91. I'd have to look it up to tell you for sure. But they began the whole drumbeat to build this baseball park, which eventually, there was a talk back and forth, where would it be? Would it be football, baseball? They added an arena to it to form the Gateway Complex, and, and pushed the idea of, well, it was originally, like so many things in the city, pushed as a, quote, public-private partnership.
Mm-hmm.
But as we're seeing right now with our new convention center, private seems to consist of making the profit, and public consists of paying for it. And there really hasn't been what you would meaningfully call a private-public sharing of the funding of it. They pushed to put a sin tax on the ballot, countywide sin tax.
Yeah.
On
I heard that was quite controversial, wasn't it?
Excuse me?
Was that quite controversial at the time?
Oh, it was very controversial on many, many, many levels. I mean, why do you make smokers and drinkers pay for it, including the fact that smoking is now banned in the buildings?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you making people in the county pay for it exclusively when so much of the use is region-wide?
Mm-hmm.
There was talk about whether this would even be enough to cover it, which when they extended it to build a football stadium, it turned out not to be. There was a lot of controversy about the terms of the deal, how the teams were paying incredibly low rent, and all the loopholes that they could use to get out of paying any fair share. I know I don't have the figures at my fingertips, but during those years in the late 90s when the Indians were doing well, and they had sold out some record number of games, and the team never got to the level where they were paying whatever percentage of the ticket revenue they were supposed to pay above their basically. They never got there in those years when they were selling out. So you can imagine that they're not paying anything when they're not selling out. There were a lot of other controversies too, including the very manipulative campaign. One thing that really, really stuck out in my mind, now a lot of people recall this, is that they promised that the Gateway Complex, these two stadiums, would create 28,000 good, permanent, career-type jobs. This would be not hot dog vendors or beer sellers or construction jobs building the place, but good, permanent jobs. That didn't happen. A few years later, a study showed they had created well under 200, and the response from the people that pushed Gateway was basically a shrug and, oh, well, I guess we were wrong, kind of thing.
Yeah, that was kind of seemed to be the same kind of reaction that I got from the book Public Stadiums Private Financing, when he was just like, well, hey, I had to do it. It's an election. I had to throw a number out there.
And another thing that they did that was very manipulative was, I think this was a few days before the election. This, of course, was back in the day before early voting. There had been a lot of talk about, Richfield Coliseum, which was way out in the boondocks, about 40 minutes south of Cleveland, maybe 15 minutes north of Akron, was the home of the Cavs.
Yeah, I've been out there.
And there was a lot of conversation about, will the Cavs move out of Richfield Coliseum? Will they come downtown? And, there was no definitive announcement made until, I think, the week before the election. My memory could be wrong, but it strikes me that it was like the Friday before the election on a Tuesday when they called a big press conference to announce that the Cavs would be coming downtown to the new arena. That struck me as just incredibly manipulative and a way of trying to get perhaps inner city residents to say, okay, we'll vote for this, because there was no way of getting to Richfield on public transportation, making the Cavs audience pretty much all white. Interestingly enough, though, in spite of this, when the sin tax was voted on, it failed in the city of Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
It did fail in the city. It was carried by the suburbs, where, of course, people are more mobile, and people can say, well, I can go over to Geauga County or Lake County and get my alcohol and cigarettes. Inner city residents might not have that option. So the whole campaign struck me as very manipulative, but it was something that the Greater Cleveland Partnership, which was in the Greater Cleveland Growth Association, which is the Cleveland Chamber of Commerce, and which is all of the major wealthy corporate powers in this town, this is what they wanted, because, they stood to benefit, and, they traditionally support all of these big bricks and mortar projects downtown, like the convention center and the Rock Hall and the football stadium. I mean, this is what they do, although right now they're very busy trying to make sure that SB 5 stays in place, and they're spending money on that, so you know where their hearts are.
Yeah, how's the general climate in Cleveland, or kind of the stadium viewed now that it's, a decade or so into it?
Well, I think it's an interesting climate up here, because there has been a lot of cynicism about the public process. That has been, some of it justified, a lot of it ginned up by our local newspaper, who saw a useful tool in creating mass cynicism, because this is we're the biggest Democratic county in the state. And if you discourage voters and create cynicism, apathy, and lack of participation, you end up with what you have in Dayton, which is one of the worst participations in the state.
Yeah, Dayton is like...
People that studied the election results last year know that Kasich won because Dayton stayed home.
Yeah.
They're very apathetic. And
Dayton stays home. Oh yeah, they stay home for local elections. I mean, like the mayor was elected like on 15% turnout.
Yeah, which is interesting, and the reason I dug into these, the results at very local levels, because after the election we heard a lot about, this caused a lack of participation in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Well, it didn't. Cuyahoga turned out as expected. But our newspaper, which basically is a mouthpiece for the Greater Cleveland Partnership, has worked very, very hard to create cynicism. And there is a lot of justifiable cynicism about these big public projects, or these big projects that are paid for by the public, mm-hmm. but from which the public doesn't really stand to benefit, although it's sold that we will. And certainly Gateway was the most conspicuous. We didn't, the public didn't see much return on the dollar during the years when the Indians were selling out every game and when LeBron James was in town. What kind of return do you think we're going to see now?
Yeah, is there any noticeable public projects that anybody, or they've claimed to say, hey, we've raised from this or anything like that? Have the parks gotten any parks gotten better? Any improvement projects? I mean, like in Dayton now, there are just parks all over the town that are closed, or just they have no staff to keep them up.
Well,
just the basics are just
cutting everything. A lot of that has to do, of course, with the recent state cuts, but certainly the city was cutting, park service. I mean, they slashed showers of parks and pools this summer.
Mm-hmm.
The county is in sort of a flux because, we completely changed government structures last year.
Mm-hmm.
But what could have been a mess has actually turned out to be probably good in the long run, but lots of stuff is in flux.
Mm-hmm.
We've also had another major Greater Cleveland Partnership boondoggle that's going up right now, which is a convention center and a medical mart.
Mm-hmm.
And the history of this is somewhat entwined, and it's equally ugly. I mean, the Greater Cleveland Partnership actually sponsored and financed, I think this would have been back in, let's say, 2004, an individual to run for county commissioner who had actually been a county commissioner and stepped down and went back into private life and said, I'm sick and tired of politics. They brought him back to defeat another county commissioner specifically because that other commissioner was not enthusiastic about building a new convention center, and they needed a water carrier for their convention center project.
Okay.
They hatched up this half-baked idea of adding on this so-called medical mart, which would be like this big showcase for, medical products and supplies, and would supposedly make this convention center a mecca for medical conventions and meetings. I've done extensive research and wrote a major article on this, and we have a writer here that's on this right now, because, of course, this all turned out to be a crock, shall we say politely. The whole process was a crock.
Mm-hmm.
They were required first of all, they decided to finance it with a sales tax that's just under the limit required to put it on the ballot.
Wow.
There was still a push to put it on the ballot anyway. They actually hired a corporate show PR person to conduct a Don't Put It on the Ballot campaign. She actually had booked a plane to fly one of those banners over the baseball field.
Mm-hmm.
That said, don't sign the petition to put it on the ballot. What the Put It on the Ballot people were proposing is that we delay deciding on this for 6 months. Put it on the ballot, I think, would have been March of 2007, I'm thinking, which would have been a 6-month delay. Discuss it, have public meetings, and then vote on it. Don't put it on the ballot. People say, we don't have the time. We got to get this underway or it won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, nothing happened until after March. What they were really afraid of was the public voting down a tax.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they were still required to have 2 public hearings before the commissioners voted on this. Those hearings were dog and pony shows. They brought in MMPI out of Chicago, the merchandise mart people,
mm-hmm.
who they basically handed the project to. There was no bidding process. I still don't understand how they managed to make that legal. And they had Christopher Kennedy, one of the most arrogant people I've ever had the displeasure of being in the presence of. I don't care that he is a member of the sublime Kennedy family. But he basically came and elapsed half the time at each of these hearings with a presentation about, isn't our company wonderful? And then the rest of the time was taken up by shills from the Greater Cleveland Partnership and Positively Cleveland, which is a fancy name for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, getting up and basically wringing their hands and saying, if we don't get this Cleveland's done, we might as well shut the doors. This is the silver bullet that's going to make our economy boom, blah, 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 blah. And the three commissioners voted. 2 of them voted to go ahead with it immediately. One was a put it on the ballot guy. So the whole process of doing that just really ramped up cynicism. Now, we were told at these hearings and throughout the entire process and by the Greater Cleveland Partnership people, this is how they sold it. They said, if you commit public dollars to building a new convention center, which we desperately need, ours is so antiquated, woe is us. Private money will come in and build this medical mart.
Mm-hmm.
It will attract the medical mart, is what they said. Somewhere along the process, it just sort of was never quite clear where, we're hearing that we're paying for both of them.
Okay.
And MMPI has gotten the deal to build it and run it. They've got a sweet deal. They're getting a check they can't lose no matter what happens. spend, $500 million, maybe a full $1 billion to build what is essentially going to be a complete boondoggle. And, if you've looked at convention centers at all, you know that virtually every single convention center in the country is subsidized forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what Mr. Chima said last week. That these what they're specifically talking about is an indoor stadium somewhere around town for probably around a 5,000 size. Nothing really, really big.
Is that what the size? Is that what Hera is?
Yeah, that's about what Hera is. Hera is. It's just kind of on the outskirts of town, and it's kind of aged.
It's really decrepit.
Yeah, it's not really a comfortable place to go see something.
No, it's not very appealing.
No. But they brought him in, and he did say, we might tell you that you don't need one, and he did say that, these are almost always financed with public dollars, but that they have to make money.
They don't make money. It's interesting, I noticed a guy down at the University of Texas in San Antonio, and his name escapes me right now, but he's known nationally as an expert on the financing of stadium and arena projects. And when I first heard about his research, and this was probably over 10 years ago, at that time, he said that there are only 2 cities in the entire country where convention centers don't lose money.
Yeah, Chima said there was only 4 in the whole country that are actually self-sustaining. Those were there was a small one, and then the 3 other ones I think were all in L.A., which...
L.A.? Are you sure they were in Las Vegas? Because at the time he said that
these were sports stadiums, maybe not convention centers, but either way, only 4 out of hundreds.
And sports arenas.
And the ones that are making money are in L.A., which there's a lot of reasons that they have a lot more, a greater availability of entertainment. 8 million people.
There's also a very dramatic difference between football stadiums, arenas, and baseball stadiums. Now, football stadium is the absolute worst investment you could make.
Yeah.
It doesn't provide any economic benefits. It's a drain on your economy. The others can be a wash depending on the general economic climate. Convention centers are always losers. At the time, the only cities that didn't lose on convention centers were Orlando and Vegas. Within 5 years, Orlando was losing money on theirs too. And now, the thing with Vegas is complicated because they have 6, 7, 8 convention centers, and some of them are private. Some of them are in hotels.
Okay.
So their picture is a little bit different, but I would guess they're all losing money now, too.
But in the end, though, when it comes down to, we've talked a lot about the stadiums, but Mr. Chima himself, would you definitely say buyer beware?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, he was basically appointed to sell this project, whatever it took, because it was what the big corporate mucky mucks wanted. And I don't think he was excessively concerned with whether it would really benefit the public. I mean, there's always this vague thing that they always sell, which is the civic pride thing. Oh, if we lose our sports teams, that's going to be so awful, and we won't, Cleveland won't have anything to be proud of anymore. But I think at the end of the day, for most people, their real concerns are, can I feed my family? Can I get a decent education for my kids? What's my neighborhood like? Is it safe? Is it appealing to live in? I still say, when they moved the Browns to Baltimore, which was the sort of trigger for adding on the football stadium, I think if our mayor had gone on TV and said, screw the NFL. We don't give a shit about what they want. We're going to take the $500 million we would have spent on a stadium and build the best big city school system in America. He would have A, been a hero, and B, there would have been tangible economic benefits.
There you go.
And, pride, what's that worth? What can you say?
Well, I mean, is someone's pride dependent upon a sports team? I mean, isn't that really selling short the meaning of life of individuals?
Well, I believe that too. It's one of the reasons that why I that although I've lived here for so many years, I've never felt like a Clevelander. I'm embarrassed that people think, oh, Brooms, kids, Indians, that's the most important thing. I mean, I come from a city where that was part of a much larger mix. And people are just as likely to be proud of something else as they are of the damn sports teams. And so,
yeah, we've got Robert Pollard, and we're the birthplace of.
You should be proud of Robert
Yeah,
Pollard.
and the birthplace of funk.
Of the Deal Sisters. You should be
Yeah.
proud of the R&B scene that came out of it. It was
Oh yeah,
in the 80s.
sure. And it was so it was. It wasn't too long, maybe a couple of years after the Roger Troutman tragedy down here, they tore his studio down, and I'm like, there's probably been more records sold because of that studio than just about anywhere on earth.
I mean, I used to get, I was a music reviewer in the 80s, and I would get records, and,
Dayton's still happening.
To have his name on them.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really, really, and Cleveland has produced some great music right now, though. They're looking at trying, the top club in town has been hit with a $400,000 bill for back admissions taxes, penalties, and fees. This is a tax that they started enforcing and increased to one of the highest levels in the country in order to pay off the stadium bonds. If this club goes under, that will take away half of the music activity.
So what are they trying to do? Like get them for backdoor charges?
What's that?
Were they trying to get them for like backdoor charges, or if they're paying bands from the door or something?
It's an admissions tax, and they haven't paid it. The city didn't aggressively try to collect it until 2009, but the fact is, the club is very much in debt anyway because of a couple of bad things that happened. They already are dealing with $200,000 in debt. It's a small club. This will put them under. There's another club that's in the same situation. There's a number of other small clubs in the city that have not paid it. If they enforce it on all these clubs, they're going to take out in the swath probably 80% of the music activity in this town. But to them, it's like all people care about is sports. And coming from Chicago, that's a very hard mentality for me to fathom.
Yeah.
I sit here and I go...
It's all throughout Ohio. Yeah.
What's that?
It's all throughout Ohio. People turn their houses into...
Oh, this whole Buckeye thing. I've actually had people, known people, kids who've gone to Ohio State and left after a year because they couldn't take that environment anymore.
Yeah.
The most important thing that happened down there was a Buckeyes football game.
Yeah, the smartest thing you hear on a Saturday is woo!
Well, I'm proud to say that nobody in my family has ever gone to a college or university where they had serious in between school sports.
Yeah.
Was intramural? I don't know whatever they call it.
Well, anyway, enough of that. But I think we've pretty hit a lot about this subject, and Daytonians, buyer beware.
Absolutely. I mean, he's there to sell a project. If he's working with this group of yours that you mentioned, Spark, that
they're tied into the
Chamber of Commerce group. As we know from the activities going around the state right now with Chamber of Commerce related groups, they are completely uninterested in the well-being of regular people that work for a living. They're interested in selling, big dazzling projects that at the end of the day some rich person benefits from. And somebody like Tom Chima he's a spokesperson for that. That's what he does. It's important to know that up front, just so you know where his interests are.
Okay.
And